So I'm going to talk about just two things. We were hoping to have something for you to experience today, but I'll get to what we're doing in a moment. But also wanted to just share with this group some of our early analysis about the different categories of use of VR, just broadly thinking, so that particularly those working in government, but indeed anyone, when they're looking at how they could engage with these technologies and, as opportunities to sort of think about it in a categorised way, rather than, because there's a lot of use cases out there and we're trying to analyse and understand what they mean and where it's useful and where it's not. I'm going to share some of those insights as well. But the other thing is that, you know, this room is full of amazing people. So thank you all so much for coming, and I know a lot of you have a lot of stuff to share in this space as well. So when we break to experience stuff, please share your experiences, your case studies. We'll send stuff out with all of this material, but if you have particular things that we can point to and reference people and those kind of things, let us know. We wanted to give you a broad range of these things for this session. So I guess the first thing I wanted to share was, I guess, some early analysis from us. I think that all comes up roughly. So the key thing there is there's a couple of key use cases, I guess, that we're sort of seeing. The first one is that concept of emulating and experimenting with the physical world. We saw that a lot of that with the Wellington Town Planning does a lot of that, obviously. The learning to dry fly surgery sort of examples, and the one we just saw is a good example of that, where the physical world is being either emulated for the purpose of engaging with it, for the purpose of modelling, or for the purpose of training, or indeed for the remote work example from the mining. So in Australia, this has been around for a little while, but there's like a dome you go into, and it's a fully virtualization of remotely working in very heavy machinery in Western Australia in real time. Of course, that needs very fast broadband, and I won't go into that issue in Australia, but that idea of experimenting with and interacting with the physical world. The second one that we've really seen a lot of emerging is as a design aid. So we're seeing a lot of agencies using more virtual reality, but also augmented reality around helping them design new services, helping them test new designs with users, helping them sort of just experiment with things before they put it into practice. Now for software, of course, we can do rapid prototyping and testing of users, but for physical spaces less so. So there's a good case study of an agency that's used virtual reality to create many different prototypes of physical spaces for customs in this particular case, so that they could test those with users and see what worked. So being used for design, to test and experiment with users. There's also the presentation of user experience. So IDEA has done some incredible work around user research about basically businesses being able to engage with the business systems in New Zealand, and helping their senior executives understand just how complicated it is. So I want to do this. What's my options? Oh, here's a whole wall of options. Oh crap, I guess I'll try that one. You know, just to help people get that empathetic experience of how frustrating it is as a small business trying to actually interact with government. So as a design aid, the third one's around obviously augmentation of the experience. You've seen a number of examples of that. I'll share a really little one with you, which is I think a particular one for New Zealand as opposed to Australia. You have a lot of imported cars with various languages on those cars. I got one of those imported cars and it's in Japanese. I can't get it out of Japanese, which is, my husband speaks Japanese, but I do not. I only have Chinese. So my favourite AR app right now is real-time translation on the fly. So I'll just hold up my phone, I can see what my car is telling me, which is kind of important at times. So you know, that real-time language translation, we actually are on the cusp of having, you know, the bagel fish, which is kind of exciting. But for shopping, for emergency response, for all kinds of stuff, augmenting. That's AR, not VR, generally speaking, although I think there's a couple of examples, but generally speaking, it's about overlaying information upon your actual real-world experience in real time. The fourth one is around telling stories and empathy. Now, we just have to be really careful with empathy as well, because obviously seeing from a first, I mean, I don't know how many of you are gamers, I'm a lifelong gamer. Just because I've played Doom doesn't mean I know how to shoot a demon. So we've got to be kind of careful, because it does give a certain amount of empathy, it does give a first-person experience, but people still bring their assumptions. So we still need to help people understand that empathy isn't just walking in someone's shoes. They also need to understand circumstances and privilege and all those kinds of, and biases and all those kinds of things. But it does help to give a person a first-person experience. The example of how we're playing with virtual reality that I'll share with you in a moment is one of those examples where we're using virtual reality as a way to give a first-person experience of alternative futures, because we're nutty that way. But there's other examples around movies 2.0, around there's interactive movies on Netflix now. I don't know if you've seen them. There's one for my kid with Puss in Boots, where you can actually, it's effectively a choose-your-own-adventure in movie form. Okay, cool. It's getting more and more interactive. And of course, service delivery and new channels. as Alex pointed out in the earlier presentation, the number of people who are, sort of using this every day is very small right now. But, we've gone from web, we've gone through the mobile days, and this is just the next series of channels. So particularly for people working in government, but of course for anyone, but particularly in government, we need to know about what the next channels are and how we respond to those channels. And we also need to make sure, this is one of my great fears, that we don't just repeat the mobile app lesson. Let's not go and build 30,000 apps at X amount per pop and then have to update them on each individual device. Try and think about how we could take a platform approach and jump straight to the responsive web equivalent of mixed reality. So there's not, I think, an answer to that yet, but there's certainly something to take into consideration. So there's a couple of lessons. I'm sure other people will have other ones as well, but they were just some of our early analysis, which might be useful to share. Our experiment is this. The main problem that we face working in service innovation and trying to, from the Service Innovation Lab, is when we talk to people about thinking about the future and about planning for users and planning and designing different ways and engaging different ways and co-design and all the different things that we can do and service design, in the back of a lot of people's minds, they're actually imagining just a website or a mobile app as the thing that gets delivered at the end of the design of the delivery. Now, where are we going into the future? What does integrated services look like? What does different futures look like? What do different modes of delivery look like? What are different options well into the future? Because one of the challenges is if you continually iterate away from pain, you're not necessarily heading towards anywhere meaningful. So what's the meaningful place that we want to get to? So we are doing an experiment, a very experimental little thing, where we're taking all of our analysis around emerging tech, emerging trends, including societal trends and democratic trends and other trends, and a very distinctly Kiwi and Maori perspective, which of course we have other experts, not me, to understand, being a foreigner, but to try to say, well, what's an optimistic future that we can predict? What's a 50, 60, 100-year view of where we want to be? So rather than saying, well, technology can automate a huge amount of jobs, we could be saying, well, technology could automate the chunk of jobs we don't want to do, and we could actually design a different life. What if rather than working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, we planned as a society to work 10 or 20 hours a week for more money, and then actually have more time for education, for invention, for art, for all the things that make a society great? Why don't we use technology to usher in a new renaissance just for fun? So what we wanted to do was to start that conversation and at the same time experiment and get our skills up with VR and to a lesser degree AR, and at the same time to explore with some of our colleagues in government what an optimistic future would look like and lay down the gauntlet and say, cool, you're not going to like all of this, you might like some of it, you might like none of it, but what's your ideas? And actually start that conversation. So we'll be hopefully being part of a few initiatives around this sort of exploration of optimistic futures. This is just ours. So we included concepts around users being, or people being more in control of their lives and their environment and the choices around them. And that was a big part of it. We looked very closely at the concept, which is weirdly new, around personal use of AI and data. I mean, a lot of people are starting to see personal helpers and stuff turn up on their mobiles, but they're provided by a company or they're provided by government, and they're provided with the needs of those organisations as part of their design, of course. Why couldn't you have, such as you had in, I mean, it's all science fiction, but in Diamond Age, Neil Stephenson, where you have a book that opens up or a helper that actually tethers to your needs, to your personal needs, what makes life better for you, that then interacts with the government AI, interacts with companies, interacts with things, and helps you actually navigate your world. So we played with that as a concept. We played with a whole bunch of stuff around open government and new models of democratic participation, because it's the sort of stuff we love. I said emerging tech trends. But we also looked at there were a lot of considerations that went into it, but it is just kind of for fun, and it's a discussion starter. So anyone that this is a very, very early demo, is not fully fleshed out. It's actually due to be launched on the 21st of February, but we thought we'd share it with you. It's got some creepy stuff in there. For anyone that's not aware of body hacking, you're about to get very uncomfortable. So it's got a lot of concepts in there. What we will do is be releasing the VR as an app, unfortunately, even though I want it to be a platform, as a video for people who don't have access to VR tools, as a more low fidelity mobile app, but we'll be releasing all the code so anyone else can expand upon it as they will. But the other thing we'll be doing is releasing the script and the information around it to say, here's how we got here, here's what we've explored in here, and here's where this is all coming from. So that'll all be made public, and wherever it's useful, great. Wherever it's not, please tell us, and we expect you to kick us when we get it wrong. So, the thing I'm going to show you, and again, it's not fully fledged out, it's very, very early days. I don't know if I have sound, so let's try this out. Good. And we actually did our first round of user feedback testing yesterday. So there's a whole bunch of feedback that we had that hasn't gone into this yet, but I'll give you an idea. Oh, we're going to have sound? Maybe. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can just shift the sound. I probably can't. You probably can't hear it then. All right, I'll just play it through and I'll just talk it through roughly. All right. Okay, so the idea here is you've got a, we'll start the experience. You've got a little helper who's actually on your wrist. If anyone's played Fallout, very similar concept. But you have a little helper who actually helps you navigate, who's talking to you, telling you about options. In this scene, we're actually hearing from a 138-year-old economist sharing lessons through the medium of dance, because, you know, why not? But you're about to participate in doing your education. There's a whole bunch of artifacts that will come through there. But really, this is just about exploring different models of education. A really great book, if anyone hasn't read it, Ready Player One, has a whole bunch of concepts around education being done through virtual reality, and the concept that the high-quality stuff will be in virtual reality, so that's worth checking out. So that kind of is a bit of a hat tip to that. You go through your portal to go into your business space, where your business has been automatically generated based on its growth projections and behaviour, a new grant. And so you get to decide how you want to spend that grant. So, you know, there's different buckets here, one around sustainability, one around sort of, I think, advertising and business sort of growth, and one around staff and improvements to the environment for your staff. And so the idea is that you're just sort of getting these different ways of, first of all, getting information and getting grants, and the idea of and the idea of having a lot more stuff projected, but then being able to interact with those things in different ways. So that's that. There's lots of. Oh yeah, and he's also telling you the impact of doing that will be this, the impact of doing that is this, and so you actually start rolling back decisions. So the impact of, you know, throwing up lots and lots of billboards might be you get an immediate trend, spike in sales, but it has a long-term negative impact on your local reputation. So is that really what you want to do? Really getting to that idea of getting more projection and modelling around you making decisions in your own life, which is kind of cool. So we move into the next one, next scene. In this one, because it knows what your mountain and your river are, and you've got the ability with your tax to actually spend maybe 10% of your tax directed however you want it to be spent. Okay, I want 10% of my tax to go on employment programs or on education or whatever else. The idea of direct, rather than being consulted on where you want tax to be spent, actually directly being able to direct a proportion of your tax. And in this case, your river and your mountain are your highest priority, and so your helper is saying, well, your river has got a spike in issues around it. Would you like it to go, your amount of money this month to go into investment into your river to help it keep clean? This one gets freaky. So this one is based around health, and we've spoken to a few people from different agencies on this, by the way, as well, and a few people from outside, but it's really, like I said, just a discussion starter. In this one, your helper is interacting with your GP and also with international data around health issues, and has predicted that it's got analysis around some issues you've had with one of your arms. And so you've got a choice. Would you like to take the culturally sensitive way and actually just get it replaced with another arm, or just get surgery, or would you like to go the slightly different way and actually replace it with a tentacle? And so then it gives you that kind of interaction. There's also the concept here of food actually growing on the outside of buildings and not being sort of miles away. So there's a whole bunch of sort of intricate concepts in here. So in this one, you've chosen to take the tentacle. Fine. So with the tentacle, you're going to play. Yep. So with the tentacle, there's a lot of interaction throughout all of this, but you're picking off the fruit, you're sort of moving on to your civics class, and getting that feeling of what that would look like. So I think that's pretty much the end of it. There's another wraparound back to education where it talks about, what do they call it? It was very clever. It was show one, share one or something. So the idea that everyone actually contributes part of their time in civics. And in this particular case, you've chosen to be the teacher in your school, in your education setting for the week to share your particular experience with the class. So there's a lot of concepts in here, and it's going to be quite interesting and hopefully spur a few conversations. We look forward to seeing some of the other optimistic futures. So in our case, we're using it to spur a conversation, get a bit of a first-person view about what the world might look like, to hopefully create a bit more empathy in our users, public servants, trying to encourage them to think about the world in slightly different ways, but also to spur some of these conversations about what the world could look like if we were to project it out, rather than just slightly better versions of the now. So that's about all I had. Thank you very much. I'll pass back over to Nadia.